Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and let me make a declaration that I have a very small investment. I think it's about £300 in a community wind farm at Boyndy, near where I live and in my constituency. Let me congratulate Andy Whiteman on his first speech in this Parliament. We will listen with interest to his subsequent speeches. When I was Minister, I think the last time I met and had a serious discussion with him, it was on a Scottish Parliament Act. Not this Scottish Parliament, but the 1491 Common Good Act, which was interacting with the Long Leases Bill, which Andy Whiteman was taking an interest in and I, as Minister, was taking through. Let me similarly congratulate Mr Burnett on his first speech. I will listen with interest to his future contributions while having no great expectations of having major agreements with him on their content. I want to spend a bit of time on the subject of climate justice, a subject which I've spoken about before in the past. In 2012, we brought to this Parliament what was then thought, and still thought, to be the first parliamentary debate on climate justice anywhere in the world. We were inspired very much by the work of Mary Robinson, the former President of the Republic of Ireland. And Mary Robinson is now a feisty campaigner for climate justice across the world. The Mary Robinson Foundation describes climate justice as something that links human rights and development to achieve a human-centred approach, safeguarding the rights of the most vulnerable and sharing the burdens and benefits of climate change and its resolution equitably and fairly. And I think that is an excellent place to start any analysis of the effects of climate change. We've heard reference in previous contributions to the flooding that took place in the north-east of Scotland. But of course, it wasn't simply the north-east of Scotland. It was the south of Scotland, indeed in many places right across these islands. And of course, the losses that individuals experienced were more than simply homes and furniture. Entire lives were put on hold. Health would be affected, and safety, both psychological and practical, was eroded. Now, the Scottish Government responded well. £12 million were released in January this year to aid those affected by the floods. Correct response, but future preventative measures will also be very important. We must head off disasters before they happen. We cannot remain at the mercy of climate change. But for the rest of the world, the issue is even greater. In Scotland, in the UK, in the developed world as a whole, we have the resources to respond to these issues. But, for example, in the Philippines, between the years 2005 and 2016, it's thought there's been $16 billion worth of damage arising from climate change. These have been from the rising of the oceans and intensification of typhoons. And indeed, the 2014 World Disaster Report showed that nearly 2 billion people have been affected by disasters over a 10-year period to 2013. And around 95% of those who suffered were either in medium development or low development countries. So we who have benefited from the industries that have created the problem of climate change through anthropomorphic effects are not the ones who are paying the cost. It is also a gender issue, because particularly in Africa, it is women who are differentially most adversely affected by climate change. They are often the gatherers of wood and the transporters of water. They are having to travel further to get either of those materials, and that is an effect that is specific to gender. So we in the developed world have to work collaboratively with people around the world on this issue, and I'm delighted that we're doing so. Now, I want to just turn in the last part of my speech to some of the things that John Scott and others of the Conservatives said about jobs and how that there can be jobs created by fracking. I have to say that's entirely hypocritical, because we've seen turning away from the prospect of jobs of carbon capture and storage in my constituency of Peterhead, and indeed in the north of England as well. We've seen a closing down of the future prospects of renewable energy sources, tidal, wind energy offshore, by the changing of the regime. At the same time as we're prepared to engage Électricité de France to build Hinkley Point nuclear power station, generating electricity at many times the cost that we could do so in renewables. And finally, Presiding Officer, let me just say gently to my colleagues on the Labour benches that while I do not stand between them and their arguments against fracking, I'm of course with them. I urge them to consider that the motion that they invite us to support at 5 o'clock tonight is one which will bring fracking closer, not move it away. Because if we make a decision against fracking without subsequently being able to defend a legal judicial review in court based on evidence, we bring forward the date at which companies can bring fracking to Scotland. That is why I won't be supporting the motion, while I will support the words that have been said by many of the members.